The Venerable Henriette DeLille. Look to the ground in front of St. Anthony's Garden and you'll see a plaque installed for Henriette DeLille, founder of the Sisters of the Holy Family. In 1836, Henriette DeLille founded the order that became the Sisters of the Holy Family in 1842, which is the second oldest surviving religious order of African American women. At the time, it was illegal for gatherings of people of color. Further, people of color were not allowed to join religious life. There wasn't a group for Henriette to join, so she created her own, in defiance of the laws restricting gatherings of people of African descent. For reference, the man remembered as the first Black priest, Father Augustus Taunton, was ordained in 1886, 44 years after the Sisters of the Holy Family were established. Henriette was born in New Orleans or nearby in 1812 or 1813. She was a free person of color who is said to be the result of a plaçage arrangement. Her father was Jean-Baptiste Lille Sarpi, or Juan Bautista Sarpi in the Spanish records. Her mother was Marie Joseph Diaz. Henriette was a cousin to Marie Laveau, the Voodoo Queen, and her great-great-grandmother was enslaved. Her early life is not well documented, but her mother seems to have suffered from mental illness, and her father was not a part of her life. A baptismal record has not been located for Henriette, but she appears in the records frequently as the godmother of enslaved children and as a witness to marriages starting in 1827, around 14 years old. Most sources say she was groomed to become a placé like her mother. The records show she gave birth to 2 sons before she received the sacrament of confirmation in 1834 at age 21. Both sons died young. By the 1840s, all sources agree that she had rejected her place as a placé and established her religious order to serve enslaved people and others in need, primarily through education, despite the regulations on people of color. The Sisters of the Holy Family were prevented from wearing habits to denote their religious status in the early history of the convent. In the same place where Teoh laws required women of color to wear headscarves to cover their hair, women who had devoted their lives to the Catholic Church were prevented from wearing traditional head coverings. Around the 1870s, the Sisters of the Holy Family were granted permission to wear a habit after Henriette's death, so none of her images have a habit. But the Sisters of the Holy Family continue the tradition of wearing their habit to this day. I could not find Henriette in the newspaper record by that name during her lifetime. Her religious name was possibly Marie Theresa, but we also have no official record that she was ever a vowed sister. The old Ursuline convent has an image of an obituary written in French for her. I found several references after her death to her as Henriette DeLille, which is a different spelling but the same pronunciation of DeLille. The lack of documentary evidence of Henriette's life has frustrated researchers and historians. The Venerable Henriette DeLille is currently in the process of becoming a saint. Along with the Venerable Augustus Taunton, the first Black priest, and the Venerable Pierre Toussaint, a remarkable layperson, she is among the first American-born people of African descent who have begun the process for sainthood, and the only woman. In other words, Mother Henriette will be one of the first Black saints, if not the first. She has been declared a servant of God and venerable by 2 popes. You can find a chapel devoted to her in the Old Baptistry in the vestibule of St. Louis Cathedral. The street that St. Augustine Church is on is also named for her. Henriette DeLille is a soon-to-be Catholic saint, a free person of color, a descendant of the first families of New Orleans, and a quintessential New Orleanian. Her story represents an American experience, the good and the bad, and is another example of why New Orleans is the most American city. Her experience in New Orleans as a free person of color was uniquely American, and for better or worse, her story will represent the American story of a saint. It is fitting that the first American-born saint of African heritage is a New Orleanian and a descendant of both the enslaved people and most prominent families of this city. New Orleans is described as the most African city in America and the most Caribbean city in America. and the most European city in America. I agree that we are all of these things all the time, a combination that is deeply American, just like Mother Henriette. The plaque noting her significance names this location Place de Henriette DeLille. The irony of honoring her this way when she rejected her place destiny is not lost on me. As you walk past Orleans Avenue, you'll see the Bourbon Orleans Hotel about halfway down the block. The site of the Bourbon Orleans Hotel was the Sisters of the Holy Family Convent, orphanage, and school for people of color before it became a hotel. The Sisters of the Holy Family used the site that is now the Bourbon Orleans Hotel starting in 1881 until 1964, so Henriette never served God at this location. The Sisters of the Holy Family are now housed in New Orleans East. Henriette died in 1862, possibly of tuberculosis. But a 1976 undergraduate thesis from Xavier University by Sister Mary Frances Borgia Hart suggested that the emotional and physical effects of the Battle of New Orleans and resulting occupation of the city during the Civil War contributed to her passing. In her will, she bequeaths an enslaved woman named Betsy to her brother, who she had inherited from her sister. St. Mary's Academy is the school for girls associated with the Sisters of the Holy Family. It was founded in 1867 and moved to this location on Orleans Street in 1881, and then to New Orleans East in 1965. The mission of the order has always included educating young women, and one notable alumna of St. Mary's is Leah Chase, the queen of Creole cuisine, who graduated in 1939. She was born on the North Shore of Lake Pontchartrain, and no Catholic education was available to her as a person of color. Leah's family chose to send her to the city to attend St. Mary's Academy. But perhaps the most impressive graduates to come from St. Mary's graduated only a year ago. In 2023, two students, Nikia Jackson and Kelsey Johnson, each created new proofs for the Pythagorean theorem, a feat thought impossible for 2 millennia, and their accomplishment was worldwide news. They are in the process of being peer-reviewed for publication in a mathematics journal, cementing their place in mathematics history. Mother Henriette's legacy is on display in the hard work of the students of St. Mary's. Before it was a hotel or convent, the site of the Bourbon Orleans was the Théâtre d'Orléans. Just like the New Orleanians of today, the colonial Creoles loved music and dancing. Balls became a staple of life in New Orleans. One of the early governors of the colony, Governor Foudroy, who was governor from 1743 to 1753, was determined to make New Orleans the Petit Paris they had advertised. The culture of aristocracy with formalities and balls was adopted to help pass the time in the swamp. Public balls, private balls, subscription balls, carnival balls, and even the mysterious quadroon balls. During the Spanish colonial period, the musical enjoyment of opera was entertaining the elite colonists along with balls. According to the New Orleans Opera website, the first opera performed in New Orleans was Sylvain on May 22, 1796 at the Théâtre de la Rue Saint-Pierre. By 1815, the first Théâtre d'Orléans, where the Bourbon Orleans Hotel is now, was opened, and eventually this theater was the most important theater for the operatic season before the Civil War, hosting a number of nationwide premieres. This is also the location where the Orleans Ballroom was located, which is essential to the system of plaçage that Henriette DeLille was born into. Watch my video, Arranged Marriages Before the Civil War, to learn more about plaçage. Please like and subscribe for more from the deep, coming soon.